Welcome to the Convergent Impact Leadership Podcast, where we explore real leadership stories and strategies to inspire meaningful action and purpose. Whether you're a seasoned leader or just starting out, this podcast is here to help you lead with intent, build trust, and strengthen relationships in your organization. I'm Eric Savickas, bringing over 30 years of leadership experience from my time as a retired U.S. Army officer, university instructor, and currently as a leadership coach working with the fire service. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Chief Brycen Garrison, Fire Chief of the Brighton Fire Rescue District in Colorado. Originally from New Jersey, Chief Garrison came to Colorado to attend Colorado State University and made it his home. He's a credentialed Chief Fire Officer and Chief Training Officer, and a leader deeply grounded in service and vision. He describes his mission as energizing, encouraging, and empowering people, using positivity to remove roadblocks so that others can become their best version of themselves. Under his leadership, Brighton Fire has remained committed to building a strong, well-trained organization that leads with purpose and connection. We'll explore his leadership philosophy, how he keeps people at the center of the mission, and his perspective on clear decision-making in a dynamic environment. Chief Garrison, welcome to the podcast. I am so excited to be able to talk to you today.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate you having me, of course. All those things sound really, really nice. So I'm hoping that we can expand on a couple of those, because we always have this best version of what we would like to be. So I think a lot of that is there in what you shared. So I'm happy to share that with other people. And if hopefully that's inspirational in some way. Of course, you kind of read right from my mission statement. If that energizes and encourages them, then after that, I'm just going to empower them to go do great things for other people. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So thanks.
Yeah, we will get into that. But let's start with you. What brought you to the fire service originally, and then from New Jersey all the way out here to Colorado? How did you eventually become chief at Brighton Fire?
Sure. Well, you had mentioned I came out to school out here, and really that was to ski and get a degree. So it was a little combination kind of deal. Love skiing in Colorado. And so that was the initial draw, was the beauty of Colorado, the ability to go explore something new. And I'd done a little bit of traveling to Colorado to ski a few times over my lifetime, and that's kind of what drew me here to start school as well. Lifelong learner, still attending different schools of some sort, so that really hasn't changed, although the skiing part probably has. A lot less time. I've done it over the years, and taught my daughters how to ski a little bit, but that's a little bit more secondary. So hoping to get back to that when I get closer to retirement. So
yeah.
So that's a little bit of the start of kind of how I came here, but and then the fire service is a little bit unique. I worked AT&T Wireless corporate after I was in college at CSU, Colorado State, and I'd worked for one of their dealers, and then with cell phones and all those kinds of things, and then eventually worked for them directly after college in downtown Denver. And when I first started working for AT&T, they were actually called McCaw Cellular. Then Cellular One bought them, then AT&T Cellular. So there was this progression, even with my time of working for them over some years, where they had grown. One of the things that was unique when it became AT&T, it was still a great organization. But there was a little bit of that smaller community feel had gone away. And I was living in a small community here in Brighton, and they had a sign out one day on the fire station that said looking for volunteers. It sounds like fun. I get to go help in the community. I don't know really anything about firefighting. I have no real family background in there, although my dad did some of that from when he was in his military time and a little bit after that, but it wasn't really a big thing in our home. So I just found it as an opportunity so I could just give back to the community. That was my initial thoughts of being a volunteer. And then I realized through Academy that people do this as a career. And I thought that was amazing. I'm like, you could actually do this for because your work. That sounds awesome. Like going to help people and working on these teams. And I just found that really energizing. And how that transition happened for me was AT&T Wireless was actually moving out of Denver, at least the role that I had there. And it was moving to Plano, Texas. And I just was not necessarily wanting to go to Texas at the time. A great state, just not a place I wanted to go as a young person. So I took a severance, and then I hired on maybe 8 months later when they had a hiring opportunity here in Brighton to become a career firefighter. And that's kind of how that started. Yeah, the fire service is just, I mean, cutting up cars, putting out fire, working with great people, like all that stuff was like, I love it. It's just like this amazing team sport you get to go do that really makes a big impact. So that's how it started. That might be too much story, but.
No, no, it sounds great. It sounds like you are a case study example in somebody that has followed their passions throughout their life, right? Whether it was a passion for coming out to Colorado for the education, but mainly for the skiing,
A
and
little bit
then
both.
doing some work in Denver, probably based on your degree or something that led you to that, and then seeing the stuff in Brighton with the volunteer opportunity with the fire department and continuing that now that all that today. I think that that's really good. And when I was on your website, I was reading that you describe your vision in part as being a place where everyone is for the shared vision and for each other and those that you serve. What does that look like to you, like day to
Sure.
day?
Yeah, I'm a huge kind of mission, vision, values person. It's something over my career that I've really had the chance to practice and figure out how to use it and develop it. And what I'll share with you is it's doesn't matter how good of a ship you build. If you don't have the right rudder, you wind up on the rocks. So for me, mission, vision, values is the rudder. This is how we steer and direct everything that we're going to go do. And if we say we're going in that direction and that's what we're going to go after, how do we get there? And the way that I interpret mission, vision, values is that ability to steer the ship. So that's kind of the thought process of kind of how I see that metaphorically. For me personally, if we aren't aligned as it relates to this vision, this picture on the wall that we're trying to put together, then we're going to be going in different directions. And any group that does that is going to find themselves in struggle. And that doesn't mean that you can't have good discussion on the way to a good decision. It just means that if we decide one thing, but you're going to go in a different direction, organizationally, it will present challenges. And we see that probably happen in a lot of places. So for all of us, what we want to do is clearly paint that picture of what the future looks like. That's through our vision. We have an organizational mission, vision, values. We have divisional mission, vision, values. We have the battalion chief's office mission, vision, values. I have my own personal set, which is what you're looking at there. And for me, when I'm trying to paint that picture, what I'm really trying to tell everybody is we have to be focused on that same picture. We have to, well, we might be looking at different parts of it. We've got to be looking at the same picture. That's that vision. So for what I'm trying to do is to remember and remind everybody that as the head vision officer, this is what we said we wanted to go after. And that's my role on a regular basis. My job is not to go to fires and say, did you put the fire out correctly? Which I love when they do. And sometimes they don't and they do better after, which is amazing. But in reality, my role as that head vision officer, keep painting that picture of where we're trying to go, remind everybody of what we said we wanted to go after. And we do that together. So when I think about how does that tie into my day to day, it's every part of our day. So one example would be is when you sit in our conference room where a lot of the leadership team will sit or our hiring team will sit or these other folks on the wall and letter or font that I can read across the room. It basically says, this is what we value. This is the
Mhm.
mission, what we're trying to go do. And this is the mission of why we exist. And this is the things we said we wanted to go do. So constantly we can measure our actions to that standard to see if we're meeting it. And if we're not, let's change direction back to it. And it also keeps us from going off course on something that is not something we said was important. So that's how we use, sorry, I kind of slammed the desk earlier, but that's how we use that mission, vision, values.
It certainly sounds like you have great alignment with the starting foundational building block as the mission, i.e. the compass, and then your vision being that horizon that you're trying to get to, and how all that ties together with the values. I've had conversations with others and just in discussion, kind of, maybe with a little bit of regret, saying that I think maybe like the advent of web pages, and I'm sounding like the old guy here, the advent of web pages and websites and stuff like that has maybe twisted our missions a little bit because we put them on our websites and we know they become public facing then. And so we have to add in all these flowery words to sound really good so that when the public does digest our mission statement, they can say, yeah, I believe in that. But in reality, and maybe you can speak to this a little bit, Chief, in reality, our mission should be internally focused, right? It should speak to all our members to let them know why we exist, why they're fundamentally here, and what they should do, barring all other instructions and orders and directives. And so we sometimes stray from that, I think, when it becomes something like our mission is we're the utmost professionals or whatever. And I'm not bagging on anyone's mission, but like, when I look at that as a member, I'm like, that doesn't tell me anything about what to do. I mean, that is a value statement, but it doesn't tell me foundationally why we exist as an organization. Can you
Sure.
speak to that and how that has maybe kind of twisted our missions over the years?
Well, it certainly can. So what I look at with, and I'm just going to use mission, vision, values as a general set, is when you establish your mission, vision, values, those are the things you said that were important. And you took a lot of time to think about that. So that's long-term thinking, right? We sit down over days, maybe months or weeks, whatever that time frame is, and we come to this general guiding document. And on the day-to-day, we're doing short-term thinking. We're deciding about a problem, and we know in long-term and short-term thinking, thinking fast, thinking slow, if you want to use some of the kind of Kahneman's book on some of that stuff, there's different processes that are activated in your mind on how to make decisions. And what you really want to do is align your short-term decision making with long-term thought,
Hmm.
because long-term thought is rooted in a much a different kind of orientation. If you're aiming at a target further down the road, you've got to do a lot of the things kind of right here so that it aligns as you kind of go down that track. So I look at it in that regard, which is long-term thinking, short-term thinking. Take your short-term thinking and measure it against your long-term thinking, your mission, vision, values, so that when you're making decisions, you don't get what you kind of shared, which is kind of that mission creep or mission deviation, and you start going down a different path. The other piece is it's a really important component for the leadership team to be rooted in mission, vision, values terms, meaning if we make that decision, where does that align with our mission, vision, or values? That is a question leaders should be asking. That's strategy, meaning, and we've talked about maybe a little bit of this where you have some tactics and some tasks and all these things that have to get done. And a lot of times leaders have a hard time getting out of tactics and tasks. A lot of times they get out of tasks, they can get into tactical, but they really have a hard time staying in strategy. And what I've encouraged all of our leadership team to do is as you're making decisions, ask your team, does this align? The strategy for you in that measurement tool is to stop and ask a question, not to give direction, and then look to that to help find some direction. So that's one way to do that. I think other people don't realize the importance of mission, vision, values. They think it's a check mark and a thing they hang on the wall, and that's all, or put it on your website, and that's all it was meant to be. Like we did the project, we made a mission, vision, values, and we're good. But that is the worst way you could use it. So even here at Brighton Fire, there was a time that we, the leadership team, actually had come up with a mission, vision, value statement. It was 2 pages long. It was paragraphs upon paragraphs of what we said was true about our organization. Everybody studied it at their promotional exam. No one asked a question about it in any of the exams that you ever went to, so it was kind of a wasted exercise, but no one really put it into practice. So when we developed ours, we got a subset of about 50% of the organization where some of the tools were kind of initially, first couple steps were developed in a smaller group and then given to the bigger group, and then it was fine-tuned and then brought back to the smaller group and then fine-tuned. So everybody has some buy-in on this thing. I think as a fire chief or any organizational leader, you can come up with the best mission, vision, value statement in your office, but it doesn't make a difference because no one believes in it. They've got to believe that that's who they think they are. That's what they want to go after. That's how they're what be true about themselves. And values are probably the most critical component because that's the stuff you won't compromise on. If you say your value is community, then you can't compromise on community, meaning when you're making a difficult decision, which is the most important time that values will appear, is whatever's inside when you're squeezed will come out. So whatever you value, regardless of what you put on the wall, will come out.
Hmm.
And that's the time you want to have those values there, that long-term thinking. So when you're in a difficult situation and have to make a decision, that you align that decision with those values so that you don't fall off course.
Right.
That you don't just have a statement on a website or a plaque on the wall that means nothing to anybody. I don't think it always has to be long, and I don't even think it has to be specific. As long as your people can use that in the absence of any policy or procedure to make a decision, then the tool is effective.
Right.
So
And I
that's
think I think it sounds like not only are you doing it in a way that resonates with your membership and they are living it and encouraged to live those things versus it being just a platitude that's on the wall. I think you're also doing it and it sounds like you're doing it in a way that is Brighton Fire, right? Like a lot of departments might argue, well, we all protect life and we protect property and our missions are generally going to be the same. But I push back and I'm like, well, no, Brighton Fire is different than Denver Fire. Brighton Fire is different than a rural department or a combination department or a volunteer department. Brighton Fire is different than any other department. No two departments should be alike. I mean, they're alike foundationally, but you have a certain flavor that you bring to the department as its chief, and you want the department to be a certain thing, and your vision is unique. And so all of your foundational documents should speak to that. And I think it sounds like that you do think about those things.
100%. And I think the point you bring up is we are all rooted in the fire service, right? The fire service is what starts us, but how we define ourselves and what we believe to be true about how we want to go help people is specific to our organization. And it doesn't mean that the organization next door or down the road is any value things any more or less than we do. They all care about being rooted in the fire service. So I think that's the key. We're all rooted in that service tradition, that service history. We do all want to make sure that we are protecting life and property. Those are just foundational statements for the fire service. But then we have to define who we are and how we want to carry out that mission. And that's really I think what you're saying there is. And for us, we've defined it in these particular terms. That's our framework for us to build on. So we've got our foundation, the fire service, our framework, our mission, vision, values, and then our people's actions out in the field is all that stuff that we hang on the walls. I mean, that's the thing. What I can't tell a fire engine. I mean, I sure could, but it doesn't mean they're going to go do it. If you're driving down the street and it's winter and you see an elderly person shoveling the sidewalk, and you think you can help that person, well, that's not necessarily our job as a 911 response agency, but it aligns with our mission statement, which is we simplify ours is very simple. Positive impact through professional service. It's on our coin. It's everywhere you can see it. And it's easy enough for any firefighter to make a decision around that in the absence of any policy or procedure. So make a positive impact in the community. And sometimes that's through 911 response. Sometimes that's on the way driving back from a call where you see you can help and make a positive impact. But I don't want you to do it because I told you to do it. I want you to do it because you believe it's the right thing to do for the people that you're serving. So I'm never an ultimatum kind of person, because that's one way people can use some of these tools is make these ultimatum statements. You will go do X. But I've invited every one of our people through invitation to find any way they can to serve as best they can in this community. And if there's ever a question, all I may say is just share with me how that aligns with the mission, vision, values. And I'm going to share with you when I've had those discussions, what they've shared is that makes total sense to me. You're right. There's no policy on that. There's no procedure on that, but you did the right thing. And I appreciate that. And sometimes, by the way, procedure's wrong. So, those are living documents. And most organizations haven't touched some of their procedural stuff in years. Even when I got back here, we had part of our procedure was if there's a hiring process and the candidates are tied, the most senior volunteer will be promoted. And we hadn't had volunteers in 10 years. So procedure, some of that stuff you put on paper is meant to be a living document, and times change. So those documents should be living to be very supportive of our people. I look at those in a couple different ways. One is the action aligned with the procedure and what's the right thing to do? Or should the procedure change to align with the action? Or should the action change to align with the procedure? That's just a little kind of sidebar. But then in absence of all of those things, just use the mission, vision, values to make choices. And you'll usually do the right thing every time.
And I think
It's easy to spot stuff that's not the right thing to do too.
that's a great perspective. Like I can picture you maybe interacting with that firefighter and saying, "Hey, why did you shovel that person's walkway the other day?" Not to, call them out and play stump the chump with them or anything like that, but to just kind of dig in and see where the thought process was. And if they came back and said, "Chief, it's our mission," I bet you would be like, "Hell yeah." Right? Like that's a great interaction there and great leadership.
Even like for us, like I always worry about like those things where people are trying to set somebody up for failure. So like what you would call a stump the chump. Like that's not even a vocabulary that I'd ask our people to even use in our organization. I'm not talking about it, but it's like that behavior doesn't even align with our value set because we value the people inside our organization, right? So let's never do that to each other. Let's always be open, upfront, and honest with each other on what we're trying to go do. And what I'll share with those people, I'm asking you just so I can understand your perspective of our mission, vision, values. Because from where I sit and from where you sit are just two different perspectives. Doesn't mean one's right or wrong. It just means I want to understand what it's like to walk in your shoes.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand how I can better support you. Because the other thing is maybe I haven't given enough guidance. Maybe I gave too much guidance. How do I tailor and adjust that so I can be a better supportive leader? And so for us, that leadership stuff is servant-based.
Well, and that's asking questions. That's asking questions to truly want to hear the answer and understand where the person's coming from versus asking questions where you know the answer, but you're asking a question to make a point, right? Like if the question that you're asking has a hidden comma, "you idiot" at the end of it, right? Even if you don't say "you idiot," people receive it that way. They hear it that way. And so you have to ask questions truly with an intent to learn and understand, not why did you do this thing that I already
Yep.
know the answer to.
Yeah. No, I'm just seeking understanding because
Yeah.
here's what I will share with you is that there's a lot we don't know. And a lot of times people presume to understand more than they actually are able to comprehend in a certain circumstance. So for
Hmm.
me or any of our leadership team, if you're unclear, just seek to gain understanding. It usually starts with a question. Just share with me what I'm missing.
Hmm.
And the interesting thing is I haven't ever done that and been like, no, that makes no sense. For the most part, like, okay, I could see that. That's reasonable.
Hmm. Speaking of people, you mentioned people, and it's a good segue. You and I were at a conference together last week, and I think people were going around sharing different leadership principles or things that were impactful to them. And I remember you saying, and I wrote this down because it struck me. You said, people before things, right? And that being a guiding principle of yours. Can you speak to that a little bit, Chief?
Yeah, definitely. I think I would say as a nation and as a fire service, we're kind of indoctrinated. There's a lot of things that we might need to solve problems or those kind of so I've taken a very different approach in how we direct our people in our organization with the resources that we have, which is every time we start some conversations, we always want to remind ourselves that we're prioritizing people over things. Now, those people could be people inside the organization, people, the community, they could be other neighboring communities that we're supporting. So when we're looking at investing time or resources or money, let's invest that in our people. The people are the most important part of what makes things happen in this organization. And oddly enough, not that we're going to go do this, but you could certainly go to calls without fire trucks and still be successful because the people are the ones that are doing the work. So you look at it from that context on an extreme standpoint. Another thing is as we evaluate our teams every year, the question we ask is, where did you invest in people? And what I want you to do when you're making a statement I think the idea is we want to focus on people first, meaning not what equipment did you buy or those kind of things. Like, where did you offer training for your team? Where did you offer educational opportunity for your team to be stronger? Where did you look to, and then where did you look to add some equipment to strengthen your team's, their ability to perform? So all those things can be thought about in that way. And some of the ways we do it from a budgetary standpoint is we invest more money in education. We invest more money in training. We invest more money in opportunities for people to go to conference than probably a lot of other places. Now, we all have roughly the same bucket of money, but what we're doing is saying we're going to put our money here first, and then we're going to backfill it with some of the equipment you might need. A lot of times it's equipment you want. And I joke around with some of the folks, and this is just because I like extrication stuff. I'm like, we buy a lot of fancy tools, 50 grand in extrication. I'm telling you, if we had enough time, we could teach you all to do it with a $200 Sawzall, and we could spend more time on teaching techniques. So do you want to spend the 50 grand on the extrication tools, which of course everybody does because they're amazing? Or do we want to spend more time teaching, training, and educating on how to use some really ineffective or inexpensive tools really effectively? So that's just like, not that we're doing that, but you get the idea, which is let's just invest in people every time. First, let's think about our people. One place we do this is with our education reimbursement. When I first got here, there was a certain amount of money allotted. I think we came close to doubling that amount. And then I asked the board, would you give me the opportunity to give more of that money away? Meaning, if I've got people in school and we're limiting it to $2,000 or $3,000 a year for tuition reimbursements, and I've only got two people in there, let me give them more so that they
Hmm.
can get their schooling done faster. So that way they're not delayed in completing it. Because we know that if you spread school out over a year or two, you can probably get it done. But over 5 years, something's going to happen in your lifetime or your family circumstance that's going to derail you a little bit. So let's give those people a little bit more invested money in themselves so that they'll take that and return it back to the organization through improved leadership or skill sets or some other training opportunity. Invest in our people with the intent that hopefully they'll reinvest those things in other people inside the organization. And it's like anything, you invest and you hope for dividends, and sometimes you get them and sometimes you don't. Just so you just make as good of investments in you as you can, and you just look for those returns, and that's kind of how we do it. So that also means sometimes we're saying no to certain equipment needs. We're not going to invest in that equipment. We're just going to invest it in people. And
Have you found have you found there to be, besides an overall good feeling that you're investing in people, which is really good, have you found an ROI maybe in results of calls or run times or other, like where the rubber meets the road fire service stuff where you put that effort in the people up front and they're doing better work?
Yes. So the hard part is for some of you folks that out there that have, well, if the data doesn't support it, it isn't true. There's a lot of ways leadership works in the world, just so we're all clear. So some of that is intuitional leadership, right? Some of that is looking at and understanding and interpreting information that's not necessarily as clear as somebody would like to have as just data set.
Hmm.
So where I look for feedback from people, positive and negative, is as I go to, so I'm very highly engaged in the community. I meet a lot of people and we touch a lot of their life through 911 response. And I look for feedback from those people unsolicited that they'll generally share with me how we did on a call or how we interacted with them on a public education or how we shared teaching with their children in the schools or any of those places that were touching different parts of the community. And I'll use some of that as the barometer for feedback. I'll also look for crew satisfaction from our crews. I
Hmm.
don't send out a satisfaction survey because I don't necessarily think there's a ton of value in that, but I'm looking to go out and hear from all of our people. How are you things for you? What do you love? What can we do better? Like just kind of make it extreme questions and you can give me love it or hate it. Like it doesn't have to be that extreme, but sometimes for some of us, it helps to say, okay, I love this and I hate that. Perfect. Okay. Now I can tell you why what you hate we can't change, or I can tell you that nope, that's certainly we can modify that, and but it's going to take a little time, or it's an easy change. So some of that stuff I just like to hear feedback from our people, so we try and do that through people going. We have a lot of chief staff that go out to the fire stations. We'll have coffee, we'll have lunch, and we structure a lot of that, and we ask a lot of questions, and we're there to listen. It's called a listening tour. We're still doing it. I'm
Hmm.
in my fifth year, starting my fifth year, and we're still going out and listening to what we can do better and soliciting that feedback. So I think what we hear from a lot of folks is people love working in the crews they're working in. They feel very highly engaged in the work they're doing. The satisfaction from the community is really, really positive. That's through not necessarily solicitation from like, here's a feedback card, but it's from people sharing with what we're doing as we go out and engage in the community. So I use a lot of that. And then, things that are easy are we got a complaint on EMS. Well, if we had one complaint out of 2,000 calls and the average is 20 out of 2,000 calls, well, then I can show you just in some data set that on the average, we're responding in a way that people are receiving well. Like that part's
Right.
good. So there's some measurement on the EMS side. There's some measurement on the fire side. We do a lot of stuff to promote the strengths of our organization. So if you look at any of our social media, all that is really focused around our people and what they're doing to go help serve.
Hmm.
And then we're looking to even engage with people in the community to give feedback on how we've served and share those points of view. So ours is probably 80 to 90% our people and probably 10% call response type stuff. So, and then we get a lot of feedback on that as well. So from the comment section. So,
That makes
um,
sense. I often say that members they're on a spectrum somewhere between this place sucks and I love it here. And it's our jobs as leaders to get them closer to I love it here if we can, right? I mean, sometimes it doesn't work, but it sounds like your outlook and the perspective that you take on leadership is trying to ensure that the members are closer to that end of the spectrum than the other, right? The other leaders out there might say, well, as long as we're doing the job and putting the water on fire, then if people are disgruntled, they're disgruntled. That comes with the territory. And I don't necessarily buy that, right?
Yeah, and you even shared a little bit of my own personal mission statement, which is to lead with positivity and removing some, and I call it perceived roadblocks. There's a lot of roadblocks out there are just perceived. They're actually not in the way. Just some people put some stuff in the way. So, but how do we do things positively? And let's focus on the good things we do. And it's hard because we're in an industry where we see a lot of negative things. We see a lot of difficult circumstance with people's, call response with family turmoil and trauma and all these things. And I think that's at times, and by the way, all of the people that are out doing this are doing it sleep deprived,
Hmm.
right? And they're doing some really, really difficult work, and they're asked to do it at a level that's with perfection every time. Like the standard is high, the severity of calls is challenging, and they're doing it in an environment where that we have put them in, which is sleep deprived and night, dark, snow, rain. There's no breaks. You're doing so. I think about that context. And I understand how some people can become negative because they're involved in some very negative things they're trying to help with. and that can certainly bleed over to them. So if we lead with some positivity, look for all the good things that we do in the world, certainly analyze the things that we didn't do well. There's some of that kind of discussion. We do regular visits with a group here that helps us, where our people can talk to a psychologist or someone that can at least hear how they're doing. And then what we're looking for, that is there anyone that needs specific help, so they don't share any information with us other than, hey, we might need to help a person, right? That's what we're looking for, so that we don't miss that, so that that person isn't at the kitchen table being negative and people just think that person is negative. What they're not realizing is they might have some stress or trauma from something that they've gone and done. The one thing that I think the organizations forget is we have put them in this circumstance. Sure, they want to do the work, but we've asked them to go do these difficult things. And if we traumatize them, it is our job to wash them clean from that trauma. So we need to do that so that they can go out and keep doing that great work, and so that they're not negative about the work that they're doing. And they want to do it because they actually want to go do it. And they don't have this pain that's holding them back, that we can help them with, right? So I'm sure with your military time, you understand what I'm saying, probably from a different perspective, because I've never been in combat like that, but I've certainly been in a lot of difficult circumstances. And there's things that we don't realize as leaders we need to help our people with. So I say all that to say, we have a very positive, energetic, and engaged group. And I get that feedback from all of these different places, from from our people that go sit with our people through their evaluations, from our medical providers that do our actual physical and evaluations, from the people in the community, that people are really highly engaged. So we've found a pretty good metrics of things that we can offer, do, and support our people with, so that they can go out and keep doing the great work in the field. And a lot of that's rooted in the mission, vision, values. A lot of it's rooted in the leadership style. I think probably one of the last things I would say in some of that is, it's really hard to find an organization or groups of leaders that can lead without ego. And we have got such a tremendous group of leaders here that are on this leadership team that help support these people that are out in the field doing the hardest of the work. And they do it in a way where they're not putting themselves, their ego first, they're putting people first. And for that reason, our people feel really well supported. So there's a lot that goes on that's kind of coalescing together to kind of bring this, what I would call this really great environment here at Brighton Fire. But that's, of course I'm biased, so I apologize for everyone that's listening. But that's all the stuff I think about from how we help take care of our people.
So you mentioned leading without ego, and it certainly strikes me as you're the type of leader that wants to model the behaviors that you ask your members to embody. When it comes to decision making, Chief, do you find yourself as part of that modeling the behavior and aligning with the mission and things like that? Do you find yourself, as part of the way that you make decisions, naturally wanting to explain, this is because it aligns with our mission, or this is because of that people before things philosophy, or this is because of X, rather than maybe you get a leader that says, this is because I'm the chief, right?
Sure.
Like that's not good leadership. But not that a leader necessarily has to explain everything all the time, but I think if you give people that bigger picture understanding of why things go on and why decisions are made, they can say, I get it, and then go do great things. Do you do some of that?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I first got here, it was like, you're so transparent, and that was a very popular word. Now at the time, like, I don't know what that really means. I just like to tell everybody what's happening in their organization. So here's what I'll share with you, and I think that might answer your question, is a lot of times decisions are being made in some of the administrative space. And the thing that people forget is they've made the decision and understand it. But next thing I've asked everyone to do is, if after you've made a decision, then and the next thing is, who do I need to tell about this? Because that's a lot of where we have some gaps. And then we've also delineated discussion versus decision, because in the past, people have gotten concerned over discussion. But so we've clarified, we're in discussion on a topic. And the more discussion that generally happens, the better decision we can come to, because different perspectives are added to that. We even say that a phrase at times, let's poke holes in this discussion. Let's poke holes before we make this decision, so that we're not missing something. So we look at it in all these ways. We recognize that we're not perfect, that we are certainly fallible, that we're going to make decisions that don't go well. We're going to remediate those when that happens. We're trying to get everybody as appropriate as possible to engage in some of the discussion so that we can come to good decision. And then we're going to do that in a way where we are recognizing that we are the ones that are serving this group, this small group. Firefighters are about 120 people, and then they're serving the much larger group, which is the community. So if we do this really good service to this group, then that gives them the empowerment and ability to go out and serve this much larger group. So it's kind of a multiplying, it's like a force multiplier. So we do everything we can to take really good care of that group through these kinds of processes, discussion over decision. We try and poke holes in the things that we're doing to make sure that we're not missing something. We recognize that we're going to make decisions that are going to fail. We're going to apologize and remediate and correct them as quickly as possible. And then we're going to be very open about all the things that we're doing. There's no trade secrets in our organization. The only time that we have a little bit of closed door discussion is we come into some of the budgeting season, just because we want to make sure that what we say we can go do when it comes to pay, benefits, and some of these things we can actually afford. And it just takes a little bit of time to figure that out, a little bit behind closed doors. But once all we start figuring that stuff out, those discussions are very open with our union team, and we don't even call it negotiations. We just talk about it as collaborations. How do we both look at the same coin, see both sides of it, and figure out how best to come together? So, and I've even shared with our union group, you need to go to the IFC or the IFF, excuse me, and change negotiations, because negotiations win-loss to me. Collaborations are win-win. We want win-win circumstances for the organization and for the people. So that's another way we kind of do that as it relates to some of the dollars in the background. So I think about all that kind of stuff that we're kind of talking about there, and it kind of all comes together is just we send out every week there's an update from one of the chief's divisions. So myself or someone else is updating the organization on whatever it is they're doing. So that's open. And then we're sharing with what we're doing in different meetings. I'm doing chief updates on topics that are relevant. So as I hear kind of what's going on out there, I kind of collate all that together and I'll answer those questions so that people know organizationally, this is what we're going to go do. And then if we're in discussion about something, for me, a lot of times the discussions that are happening might be a division this or a battalion that. And I share with them, like, I don't have a dog in this fight other than I want us to remember that the decision-making has got to be structured around this value set. So don't forget that part of it.
Right. And
So I
it
think that
sounds like
probably
those processes that you have, whether it's discussion leading to decision or other inputs, they generate buy-in, ultimately generate buy-in for the thing, right? If somebody in the end says privately, I that wouldn't have been my decision, but I respect it, right? Like it's the chief's to make, and chief made it. And I say privately because what we don't want is leaders saying, guys, you won't believe what the chief came up with now, or I fought back on this, guys, trust me, but the chief decided to go forward, right? Like I think good leaders embody the decisions that are made above them and they make them theirs. And
sure.
simply, instead of saying, guys, you wouldn't believe what the chief has us doing now, you say, guys, here's our mission or here's our task, right? And you make it yours.
Grown up as a firefighter and many other roles and organizations, I certainly don't want to do things that are going to be harmful to our people. But I also look at when a leader says a statement like that, they're not a leader. So to all of you leaders out there, if you go out and say that after a meeting or a decision, you don't understand the decision well enough. So you're missing information. You need to go figure more of that out. I don't even believe in buy-in anymore. I believe in belief in, meaning, do you believe in what we're going to go do? I don't want you to buy into something you don't want to do. I want you to believe in what we're trying to go do, because buying in only gets you halfway there. Belief in will take you way further than I ever ask you to go. So if you don't have that belief in what we're going to go do and we are not aligned, then we haven't had enough discussion. We need to have more discussion to get to that decision. And yes, every now and again, a decision has to be made. But what I share for our folks inside the organization is the leadership team concept, meaning anyone that's in our organization that's a chief officer, with the exception of our CFO, that's not necessarily designated as a chief, but the chief financial officer is part of that leadership team. So that chief staff group, their priority is the leadership team first, not your role, finance officer, or training chief, or EMS chief, or pick a chief, planning logistics, or fire marshal's office, all these different divisions. Those are secondary. Those roles are secondary to your responsibility to the leadership team. So meaning you are a leader in this organization. And the one thing that leaders certainly don't go do is go out with a half bought in perspective of something and blame it on someone else because they don't understand it well enough and say, well, good luck trying to go do that. That creates organizations that are probably dying inside to find some sort of direction or value they can believe in. I mean, we all want something to believe in.
Sure, but I do recognize that it's hard, right? Like if they come out of that meeting, as you say, and there was a decision made, they've got to face their crew. Now, it often takes a lot of strength and courage and fortitude to say, guys, this is the thing. right? Like sometimes it's easier, and it's a weaker leader, granted, but it's easier to be like, yeah, guys, I got your back. And, I fought the good fight, and you want to face your crew and be one of the guys. But what you're actually modeling there is if you throw the chief under the bus or you throw any other leader under the bus and say it was them and point the finger that way, you're modeling the behavior that says it's okay to do it to me or to do it when you're in a position of leadership. And people are going to learn from that.
Well, what I hear too in that is if I think the initial statement you said it's kind of easier to go out and do those things, well, then you should change your value set. We want it to be easy and non-confrontational, and we want it to be whatever it is you're saying, then those are your values, right? That's the hard spot. So here's what I do share is like, if that's what you value in your organization, it being easy, then put I want it to be easy as my value statement. But I will share with you that I think that people that work in those environments probably are a lot less satisfied, which leads to all the other stuff we were talking about with losing focus on the mission or people not believing in what they're going to go do. People, kind of almost like what you just said, I wouldn't call it backstabbing, but basically doing the same thing that they were taught to do, which is to not all come behind a decision and support it. Like when we talk about rowing in the same direction and mission, vision, values being a rudder, we're all going in the same direction.
Hmm.
We have different sides of that we have to work on, but we all have roles and responsibilities. But when it comes to a leadership team, your role in this organization first is to lead and
Hmm.
then to do the things you're asked to do under the purview of the assignment. So all that comes together usually solves the challenge that you're speaking of, where you've got a leader that, and here's the thing a couple other things, and I apologize, I'm kind of pixeling. There's some stuff I'm missing. When I first started doing this, I brought in leadership coach. I brought in the opportunity for people to grow and develop one-on-one coaching so that they could try all those kind of ideas on with someone that I trusted that could help develop them and grow them. And it's gone really, really well because it's not always just me saying it. There's other people like yourself, right? That you can look at things objectively. Now, granted, the bucket's mostly full when you get there, but you're the last drop, man, and it tops it off. But that drop is just as important as every other drop in the bucket that got to
Sure.
the top. So you need some people like yourself to go out and offer some opportunities to coach leaders to be the kind of leader they need to be. Because people do want to be led well. And people, truthfully, in my opinion, don't respect leaders that don't lead well. They look at them as in a position that one day they'll be out of and probably aren't respected. People want to respect the person. They want to respect the role. Those leaders do need coaching and they do need some development so they can get there. And if you're not doing that, then you're going to wind up struggling and have a mediocre organization. So I really respect what you do. Before you and I met, I've had other people that have done that for our organization with great success. And what we did is we started with a group every year. So, roughly about we could afford about 5 to 8 people every year with coaching. And we're on 40 plus people now that have received that coaching.
But it's that one-on-one stuff that is really powerful. Like you can take classes and go to conferences, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that's a one-size-fits-all approach. But if I have a conversation with you and I'm like, hey, Brycen, tell me what you're working towards or what you're struggling or you're banging your head against the wall, and let's talk about it, right? We're going to solve for you. And that's in that moment the most powerful thing.
So,
As we start to wrap it up, Chief,
yeah.
think about if you could a recent moment or a decision or something that you did or were part of that was impactful that just reminded you this is why I lead the way I lead, or this is why I do what I do, and just kind of hit home for you.
So, that's an interesting one because I'm really, really fortunate and blessed to be engaged and involved in a lot of different things. So people joke around, how's it being fire chief? I'm like, I love being fire chief. The only other job that I enjoyed more in the fire service was captain on a truck. And I'm not sure why I enjoyed that one as much as I enjoy this one, but I've done a few other roles in leadership, and the ability to help hear people and take in their challenges and then offer and find opportunities to solve them so they can be that version of themselves they want to be. Like, to me, that's every day. So even like yesterday, I got to sit with a battalion for a while and we just were able to talk through things. So I really value those one-on-one times with anybody where I can get that along the way, and that I can maybe share a perspective or at least be an opportunity to listen to their challenge and maybe just the person they need to listen to. And what I share with everybody that I sit with, and this is probably the most fun thing, is I promise everyone that I talk to, with whatever truths you share with me, I will use every one of those things for good. And I'll never use it in a way that would be destructive or damage a relationship or to to call somebody out. I'll never do any of those kind of things. So for me, the reminder every time is when someone's willing to share the truths with me that most chiefs don't get to hear. It's because they know that I'm not going to do anything with that would be malicious. I would only use that in an aggregated form to improve the organization with no specific hostility or concerns to the person it's specific to. And I've been really, really fortunate from the beginning of when I got here up until yesterday, and today's been great too, but today's not over, but to really listen and hear and have people share their truths with me in a way that we can improve the organization. So those blessings come regularly. So I think about that. I think about the fun we had at the group where we met last week, and we sit down and talk about some things that I was shared with that I can pass on. So in some ways, I kind of like being an information broker. I mean, I can gather stuff up and give it all away for free, and it makes the fire service better. I love that. We need more of that in the world. Like all of us helping each other, to me, is just those things that I take a lot of joy from. And the world's always been challenged. I don't know if it's any more challenged than today than it ever has been, but now is our time to make a difference. And I really want to encourage people. So when we talk about energizing, we talk about encouraging people and empowering people. Those are the things that are important to me. It's so that the world is ultimately better for the actions that we have all taken. And that's hard because you're going to put yourself out there in a lot of places, and you're going to take a lot of whacks along the way. But that sacrifice to me has been worth every whack I've ever taken, because I look at it like planting seeds, and someday you get to reap all that stuff that we've sowed. And what that means to me is we have a local community, a Colorado community, a national community that looks to the fire service as a beacon, as a pillar for help and support in the community, and a way to uplift other people. So that's a long kind of thought process of how I think about life. I don't know if that really answered your question.
No, it's
but
good.
but I get that stuff. I see it when people are sharing truths with me that they know that I'm going to help, and that's valuable. I just want to help more people. How do we help
Yeah.
more people?
I think that's a powerful way to sum it up today. I think incredible insight. I love it. And I'd like to thank you for taking the time to share your leadership journey and insights with us this morning. I love what you said about being the chief vision officer of Brighton Fire and all the other things that you mentioned. Clearly, you're doing something right there. You've got a lot of great intent, and you're putting it into practice by leading the way that you lead. So thank you for that.
You
For our
bet.
listeners, if you found this episode valuable, please share it with your team or anyone who might benefit from these leadership takeaways. Don't forget to subscribe to the Convergent Impact Leadership Podcast and leave a review on your favorite platform. For more leadership resources and tools, visit convergentimpact.com. And until next time, lead well, take care of your people, and keep setting the example.